Right, will he stay or will he go? Enzo Fernandez has been one of the most talked about transfer sagas, can we say that?
Chelsea made Enzo Fernandez one of the most important players in the team.
By Caicedo, by João Pedro. That's away, it's Enzo Fernandez. Chelsea do lead.
They paid over £100 million to sign him. They built their midfield around him. And over time, he became part of the club's leadership group.
Threads it through to release Reece James's cross. Big deflection, Enzo Fernandez. Chelsea ahead.
But alongside the football, controversy has followed him.
I don't like Enzo Fernandez as a player. I think that his attitude stinks. He's very self-involved. And I think sides that are trying to build a good group don't recruit players like Enzo Fernandez.
At the 2026 World Cup, Enzo scored Argentina's equaliser against England in the semi-final.
Messi on Spence, trying to find space for that left foot into the middle. Enzo Fernandez! Argentina! They always find a way! And they've tied the game!
And celebrated by cupping his ears towards the English supporters. A post aimed at England after the match only added to the reaction, and that reaction was still there. In Chelsea's Premier League opener against Fulham, Enzo was heavily booed by the home supporters when he came on as a substitute.
At the introduction of Enzo Fernandez.
So why does he want to leave? Because right now, Enzo Fernandez's future at Chelsea is in serious doubt.
I'm really upset that he's still pushing for a move. At this point, it gets to the stage where it's like, come on, it's just disrespectful. It's not really embarrassing anymore. It's kind of frustrating.
Manchester City want him. The possibility of reuniting with his former manager, Enzo Maresca, is there. But this isn't the first time Enzo has found himself pushing for a move. Before Chelsea, Benfica didn't want to sell him.
I was speaking to a contact in Portugal who was telling me that Benfica were not happy about how Chelsea were approaching this potential transfer of Enzo Fernandez from Benfica to Chelsea. Well, the Benfica head coach, Roger Schmidt, he's been holding a press conference today ahead of their game tomorrow, and he's basically confirmed some of those details.
Enzo wanted the move anyway, and now, just a few years later, he appears ready to leave Chelsea for the next chapter. So is this simply ambition, or is there something more going on? Because the more you look at Enzo Fernandez's career, the harder it becomes to ignore one pattern. When Enzo Fernandez decides he wants something, he doesn't seem to take no for an answer. So what really is Enzo Fernandez's problem?
And it just feels a little bit disrespectful that just before the game you're hearing that he's pushing for a move.
To understand that, we have to go back to Benfica, because long before Manchester City entered the picture, Enzo had already found himself in the middle of another transfer battle.
We know that meetings between Chelsea, Benfica officials, the president Rui Costa, and agents occurred yesterday. No resolution. And with regard to the driving the player crazy, it is evident that he wants to go, because we also heard that before the game against Braga on Friday, Enzo Fernandez requested not to play in that game.
In the summer of 2022, Benfica signed him from River Plate. At the time, he was highly rated, but what happened next changed everything.
The player wants to go to Chelsea. That is clear. He is unhappy with the situation at Benfica at the moment. As Darmesh said, he played in that game on Friday night, but then without permission, he flew back to Argentina to be in Argentina on New Year's Eve.
Just a few months later, Enzo went to the World Cup with Argentina. They won it, and he became one of the breakout stars of the tournament and won the Young Player Award. Suddenly, the player Benfica had signed only months earlier was being linked with some of the biggest clubs in Europe. Chelsea wanted him. Enzo wanted Chelsea. Benfica, however, did not want to sell. And that's where things started to get messy. After returning from the World Cup, Enzo travelled back to Argentina for New Year's Eve without Benfica's permission. He then missed 2 training sessions. Benfica manager Roger Schmidt was clear. The club did not want to sell Enzo, and his absence from training was unacceptable.
He was not there last week. He had no permission to go to Argentina. He missed the training, so that's not acceptable. So that's why it will have consequences. I will not announce them, no.
Enzo eventually returned and faced disciplinary consequences, but the bigger problem remained. Chelsea still wanted him, and Benfica still refused to negotiate unless Chelsea met the €120 million release clause. For a while, it looked like the move was dead. Chelsea tried to negotiate, Benfica refused, and it appeared as though he would have to stay. But Chelsea came back. On deadline day, they finally got their man. The deal was worth €121 million, making Enzo Fernandez the most expensive signing in British football history at the time. From Benfica's point of view, they had lost a player they had signed only 6 months earlier. From Chelsea's point of view, they had secured one of the best young midfielders in world football. And for Enzo, he had got exactly what he wanted. Now, to be fair, there is nothing unusual about a 21-year-old World Cup winner wanting to join Chelsea, and Benfica could not stop him once Chelsea were willing to meet the terms of his release clause. But when you look at what happened in the weeks before that transfer, one thing is difficult to ignore. Enzo wanted the move, and the longer Benfica stood in the way, the more complicated the situation became. 3 years later, we are looking at Enzo Fernandez again. This time, the club trying to keep him is Chelsea, and the club he may want to join is Manchester City. So was what happened at Benfica simply a young player taking the opportunity of a lifetime, or was it the first sign of something that has followed Enzo throughout his career? Because Chelsea were about to find out exactly what kind of player they had spent more than £100 million on. And despite everything that has happened since, one thing is clear. Enzo Fernandez's time at Chelsea has not been a failure. The club went through difficult periods after his arrival, changing managers and rebuilding the squad, but Enzo remained. Over time, he became one of the most important players at Chelsea, and eventually, the trophies followed. Then came the FIFA World Cup. Chelsea beat Paris Saint-Germain 3-0 in the final, with Enzo starting the game as the club became world champions. He helped Chelsea win the UEFA Conference League. For a player who had already won the World Cup with Argentina, it was another major trophy added to his career. And as his role at Chelsea grew, so did his responsibility. He wasn't just another midfielder anymore. He became one of the senior figures in the squad, a player trusted with the captain's armband, and increasingly seen as part of Chelsea's leadership group. That is what makes the current situation difficult to understand. Chelsea didn't spend years trying to get rid of Enzo. They didn't reduce his role. They didn't treat him like an expensive mistake. Quite the opposite. Enzo Fernandez became a central part of the team. But alongside the football came controversy. In 2024, Fernandez faced major backlash after broadcasting Argentina's Copa America celebrations, during which he and several teammates sang a discriminatory chant targeting French players. The incident created tension with some of his Chelsea teammates and forced Enzo to publicly apologise. Then came the 2026 World Cup. Against England in the semi-final, Enzo scored Argentina's equaliser and celebrated by cupping his ears towards the English supporters. Argentina reached the final against Spain, but Enzo's tournament ended in frustration when he was sent off after receiving a second yellow card. And when he returned to England, the attention surrounding his World Cup was still following him. But even that wasn't the biggest issue, because while Enzo was representing Argentina at the World Cup, questions were already growing over his future at Chelsea. A player Chelsea had spent over £100 million on was now being linked with a move away, and Manchester City were watching. The possibility of reuniting with Enzo Maresca immediately made the situation even more interesting. At Benfica, Enzo wanted Chelsea. At Chelsea, he became one of the club's most important players, and now Manchester City could be next. So maybe this isn't really about Chelsea. Maybe Enzo Fernandez is simply the kind of player who is always looking towards the next opportunity. And if that's true, then Enzo isn't the only Argentine star currently trying to find a way out of his club. Because over in Spain, Julian Alvarez may be facing a remarkably similar situation. Like Enzo, Alvarez is one of Argentina's biggest stars. And like Enzo, He wants out. Atletico, however, do not want to sell one of their most important players to a direct rival. So Enzo wants Manchester City. Alvarez wants Barcelona. Their situations are different, but the comparison is still interesting. Both players appear willing to push for a different future when they believe there is a better opportunity elsewhere. That does not mean there is an Argentina problem. It may simply be two ambitious players trying to take control of their careers. But in Enzo's case, Manchester City is particularly interesting. And now, as of August 25, City are reportedly ready to try again. Enzo has opened the door to the move, while Chelsea's position is straightforward. If the offer is right and selling him allows them to improve the squad, they will consider it. So the question now is not whether City are interested, it is whether they can convince Chelsea to sell one of their most important players to a Premier League rival. And from a football perspective, the move makes sense. City have lost Rodri to Barcelona and recently brought in Ayoub Bouadi, but Enzo is a different type of midfielder. He's not a Rodri replacement. He does not offer the same defensive control or positional discipline. What he does offer is progression, creativity, and more threat in the final third, and Maresca already knows exactly what he can do. So if City are willing to spend heavily on him, they may see Enzo as part of a new midfield rather than a direct replacement for Rodri. Which brings us back to the question we started with. So what really is Enzo Fernandez's problem? Enzo Fernandez has decided he wants the next step, and history suggests he can be very difficult to stop.